There are thousands upon thousands of videos. Half of them belong to the smoke-like charm of her presence. My dear viewers, connect to Wi-Fi. Get your snacks ready. The excitement is about to begin. I had sponsored Liu Ryan for 7 years, and I had loved him for just as long. He finally agreed to be with me, but only later did I find out that the one he truly loved was his childhood friend he grew up with. He had always hated me, believing I was using money to control him, humiliating him throughout 10 years of marriage. He treated me with utmost coldness. In the end, he simply moved out and lived with that childhood friend, and I was left alone in an empty house, with a ring away in sorrow. When I was reborn, I returned to the very day I had decided to sponsor him. Liu Ryan's childhood friend stepped in front of him and shouted at me angrily, "Do you think money makes you superior? We don't need it." I smiled and said, "You're overthinking it. Even if I have to burn this money, I wouldn't spend it on you. Yi Zheng, aren't you just someone with a bit of filthy money? Do you really think that makes you superior? We don't care for it." Looking at Lu Mingyi standing in front of Liu Ryan, I felt a little dazed. My gaze met Liu Ryan's eyes. At 20, Liu Ryan's face still held a trace of youthful innocence. He wore a long linen dress faded from too many washes, but he was simply too beautiful, tall and slender, his skin porcelain white. His eyes sparkled like stars in the sky. Even his worn clothes seemed to glow with elegance. I couldn't help but take a step back. I had to steady myself by holding onto the table behind me. This version of Liu Ryan, how long had it been since I last saw him like this? 10 years, or was it 20? It had been so long I couldn't remember anymore. After all, that was already a past life. Liu Ryan slightly froze when he saw me step back. Lu Mingyi was still rambling on, but I couldn't hear a single word anymore. Everything in front of me was exactly the same as it had been in my past life. It was just like this back then. He refused my sponsorship, but I insisted on helping him anyway. I had loved Liu Ryan for 7 years. I knew his family situation was bad. His father was a hopeless gambling addict. He lost everything again and again, coming home drunk and abusive. And his mother couldn't bear the torment and eventually drowned herself in the river. Since he was young, Liu Ryan went out on his own to pick up trash and did odd jobs. The rest of his education came from scholarship applications. As for me, I had been born into a well-off family. By right, we never should have crossed paths. But his grades were always exceptional. So during high school, our private school focused on university admission rates, offered him a scholarship. That was how we ended up at the same high school. Back then, our circle was full of pampered children, rich but uninterested in studying, drifting aimlessly through each day, just waiting to go abroad for a degree, then return to inherit the family business. Only Liu Ryan was different. He had clear goals, studied hard in class, worked part-time as soon as school ended. Though he had no money, he never thought it was anything to be ashamed of. Never once did he bow or beg. Always carried himself with quiet dignity. He was simply too different from the rest, like a wild orchid blooming beautifully and tenaciously in a greenhouse, out of place yet breathtaking. His elegance clashed with the surrounding mediocrity. That was when I first fell for him. I liked him, so I couldn't bear to see him suffer. Back then I was young and immature, always self-righteously giving him things I thought were good for him. When he had to work at night and didn't have time for breakfast, I would bring him lunch from home. Liu Ryan, our housekeeper's braised beef is the best. Try it, there's foie gras too. It's something father specially had flown in. It smelled especially good back then. I was the only child in the family. Since I was young, I lived a life where everything was handed to me effortlessly. Meals appeared when I was hungry, and clothes dressed me without lifting a finger. Everyone around me doted on me. They spoiled me into becoming completely thoughtless. I just wanted to give him the best of everything I had, but I never once considered whether he even wanted it. Our classmates started jeering around us. What would Yi Jung know about foie gras? Haha, he probably can't even afford chicken liver. I cursed at them. None of your damn business. I didn't notice how tightly Liu Ryan gripped the lunchbox. His fingers turned pale from the pressure. He stood there silently for a moment, then handed the lunchbox back to me, and coldly said, "Thank you for your kindness, but I don't need it." Beside Liu Ryan, some girls nudged each other with playful looks. If you get together with Yi Jung, you'll never have to work part-time again in this lifetime. Go on, cling to him already. Exactly. Then your dad can gamble all he wants, and won't have to rely on your tuition to fund it. Hey, ha. Everyone burst out laughing. I slammed the table and shot to my feet. Shut up, all of you. The others stopped laughing, but Liu Ryan suddenly stood up and turned to walk out. I chased after him, trying to force the lunchbox into his hands. Liu Ryan, don't listen to their nonsense. Hurry up and eat something. Otherwise, you still have to work tonight. Your body won't be able to handle it. He stopped and suddenly turned around. I froze in place. There was nothing but hatred and disgust in his eyes. Teenagers have such short memories. I quickly forgot that whole incident and kept pestering Liu Ryan. For him, I even started studying seriously, so we could attend the same university. My father was so pleased he couldn't stop smiling. He even doubled my living allowance. At university, Liu Ryan became even busier. His scholarship application had failed, and his poverty aid was snatched away by a classmate with family connections. At his worst moments, he could only afford one steamed bun a day at the cafeteria, then watered it down with free soup to fill his stomach. I couldn't bear to watch any longer, and offered to support him financially, but he refused me again. He worked 3 jobs a day, until one day, he even collapsed from exhaustion on the street. That was when I finally couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed him and insisted on giving him money. Liu Ryan, why won't you take my money? You're working yourself to the bone. What are you doing this for? I went to speak with his academic advisor and forced the tuition payment through. By then, I had started to understand a few things, like how to respect his pride. So when we ate together, I always pulled him over, then pretended I couldn't finish my food, and asked him to help me eat it. When we went out, I always said that I had won some free tickets, and dragged him along. Slowly, it felt like my relationship with Liu Ryan was growing closer. That was how I kept supporting him all the way through graduation, just to make him happy. I even sponsored his childhood friend Lu Mingyi as well. After graduation, Liu Ryan started his own business. He had always been a top student. Back in school, he and his friends developed a stock trading model, but he hit walls everywhere. No one was willing to invest, no matter how hard he tried. I couldn't bear to see him that disheartened, so I went straight to my father and had him invest instead. I still remember that night, Liu Ryan was unusually quiet. I held him close as we were almost drifting off to sleep. Then he suddenly spoke, "Yi Jung, why are you doing all this?" At the time, I thought he meant to ask, "Why are you so good to me?" So I answered without hesitation, "Because I like you." Liu Ryan, do you like me? I held his hand tightly. I've done so much for you. Why won't you be with me? He was utterly heartless toward me. Back then, I was only joking when I said it. But Liu Ryan said nothing. I assumed his silence meant agreement. And just like that, we ended up together. 2 years later, I married Liu Ryan. The wedding was rushed and barely held together. Liu Ryan said he didn't like being around too many people, so we only invited a few close relatives and friends. All of them were my relatives and friends. On his side, he came alone. After the wedding, Liu Ryan remained as cold to me as ever. I was truly foolish back then. I thought that was simply the way he was. After all, I had chased after him for so many years. As long as I kept being good to him, Even a heart of stone would soften eventually. But I never expected that he really was completely unmoved, because his heart had belonged to someone else from the very beginning. In the 3rd year of our marriage, our conflicts became completely irreconcilable. I could no longer endure his constant coldness. I confronted him, asking if he was in love with that childhood friend of his. He only stared at me coldly, not saying a single word. Pushed to the edge, he simply slammed the door and left. His emotional abuse drove me into deeper obsession and madness. Every time he came home, I would interrogate him, scream at him. During the worst of our fights, I lost all control over my words. If I had known you were such an ungrateful bastard, I would have raised a dog instead. At least a dog would wag its tail at me. For a brief moment, I saw anger flicker in his eyes. Then he calmed down almost instantly. From that day on, he stopped coming home altogether. It wasn't until later that I found out he had already been living with that childhood friend. They had built a new home together. He had even gotten pregnant with his child. All those years, he had a happy and complete family outside, while I guarded an empty house alone. All the love I had fermented into venomous hatred. Liu Ryan became a successful entrepreneur. He ended up wealthier than my own father. I had nothing left with which to retaliate against him. The only thing I still possessed was our marriage. I gambled my entire life to take revenge on him. Even if it killed me, I refused to divorce him, no matter how much money he offered me. He had destroyed me, so I would never let him live in peace. The man he loved would forever remain a hidden third party, shrouded in shame. The child he had with someone else would always be a bastard born in the shadows. Even Liu Ryan didn't dare take me to court. He was afraid that our marital dispute would blow up and damage his company's image, and the other board members would never approve. So I dragged things on with him for 10 whole years. In those 10 years, no matter how I screamed hysterically, how I lost control, even when I finally broke down and begged, he never showed me a shred of mercy. He never came back to visit me even once. And so, day by day, in mounting despair, I withered away. Illness ravaged my body, and eventually I died of grief and sorrow. Yi-jung, I snapped back to the present and looked toward Liu Ryan beside me. A seething hatred surged through my limbs and bones. My heart felt like it was going to explode. I almost couldn't stay standing. After I died, he finally got what he wanted. Maybe all along, the way he treated me was just to torture me to death sooner. I still remember right before I died, my medicine was suddenly changed. When I asked the housekeeper about it, he only said it was switched to something milder. I suspected it was him, and not long after taking that medicine, my body rapidly deteriorated to the point where I couldn't even sit up. And soon after, I took my last breath. It was him, wasn't it? Who else could have hated me that much? To go so far. He hated me so much he wished I would just drop dead. He wanted to marry Luming as soon as possible. How touching that must have been. I watched as Liu Ryan forced himself to hold back the impulse to rush up and kill me with his own hands. The hatred inside me was overwhelming. Aside from being immature and thoughtless when I was younger and not being careful enough with his pride, I truly had done nothing to wrong Liu Ryan. Even when we got married, I never forced him. I had even asked him if he was willing, and told him that if he wasn't, I could wait longer. Yet still, he came to hate me like this. Lumingyi was still yelling at me like he had in our past life. Yi-jung, do you think being rich makes you so great? What right do you have to humiliate others like this? Take your filthy money and get lost. I turned to look at Lumingyi. To be honest, he wasn't bad looking. He just wore a slightly worn-out tracksuit, which made him seem rather shabby. His eyes were full of emotional intensity as he stared at me. So this was the man Liu Ryan loved. Even if I killed him, they would still want to be together. It had been exactly like this in our past life too. Liu Ryan and I had been talking calmly at first. I told him that if he felt uncomfortable, then once I earned enough money, I would absolutely pay it back. He could treat it as if I had borrowed from him. But Lu Mingyi suddenly accused me of throwing money at people and said I was insulting Liu Ryan. It wasn't until I later argued with Liu Ryan that I found out he had always thought I was using money to belittle him, that I had insulted him. Suddenly, I found it all so ridiculous. Looking at the way Lu Mingyi protected him so fiercely, I curled my lips into a smile. You're overthinking it. I'd rather burn this money than give a single cent to you. Liu Ryan's expression turned ice cold. Lu Mingyi froze for a moment. Smiling, I said, "Didn't you say me helping you was an insult to you both? We're all classmates here. How could I possibly be so condescending? Since that's how you feel, then forget it. You to go keep working those part-time jobs." Lu Mingyi's family situation was pretty similar to Liu Ryan's. Not only did they have debts, his mother worked herself to the bone to support him, and he was covered in filth just trying to stay in school. Now, he could barely get out of bed. Maybe it was because they shared such hardship that he and Liu Ryan grew close. He was always hovering around him. Always. Whenever I went out with Liu Ryan, he'd cling to him and insist on joining us. If I didn't want him to come, he'd confront me right in front of Liu Ryan and ask, "You know it too. Is it because I'm poor? Is that why you don't want to be friends with me?" Before I could say anything, Liu Ryan would already be setting down his bowl with a clatter and say, "If you think we're not good enough for you, then don't come along." So I had no choice but to bring him. During meals, he would stare at the dishes on the table and sneer, "You eat like this every day. We really don't belong in the same world." There were quite a few times when Liu Ryan and I were chatting and getting along just fine. Then, out of nowhere, he'd say something like that, and Liu Ryan's smile would instantly vanish. He wouldn't talk to me anymore either. At first, I thought he was just being moody. Until one day, I was walking with Liu Ryan and suddenly turned back to say something to him, only to catch the look in his eyes. Lu Mingyi wore a blank face, but his eyes were filled with shadows and resentment. When he saw me turn back, he was caught off guard for a second, then quickly forced a smile. But all I felt was a creeping chill. That was the moment I finally realized he hated me. Or rather, he loathed me. Actually, when Liu Ryan and I first got married, we did have a brief moment of peace and harmony. Back then, his company had finally found stable footing. He had secured his first order. And after the celebration banquet, he wrapped his drunken arms around me and smiled, calling me husband. "What do you like?" he asked me sweetly. "Whatever it is, your wife will buy it for you." My heart ached knowing how hard he worked to earn that money. I held him, feeling deeply content. "There's no need. Your company just got started. This is when you need to save every penny. Just you thinking of me makes me happy enough." But he wouldn't let it go. He clung to my neck, acting all coy and affectionate. "Wife earns money for her husband to spend. I'll buy you a car," he insisted. "What kind of car do you like?" Even as he drifted off to sleep, he kept mumbling under his breath, "Yi Jung, I have money now. You don't have to make sacrifices for me anymore. You don't have to suffer with me." Sure enough, the very next day, he bought me a car. But before I could say a word, Lu Mingyi followed along behind us. He looked at the car keys in my hand, and for a moment, his face showed a trace of helplessness. Then, without warning, he snatched the keys right out of my hand and said with a grin to Liu Ryan, "All right, I remember this car. Yi Jung already had it back in college. A friend gave it to him. He said seafood was too cheap back then and didn't want to take it." Honestly, I had completely forgotten whether that was true or not. But Liu Ryan's face changed instantly. He silently took the keys and walked away without a word. From then on, he began to grow distant toward me. And as for that car, Lumingyi was the one driving it now. He wore his little smirk at the corner of his mouth, strutting around like he owned it. He even handed the car to Liu Ryan and said, "You're not mad, right?" Of course, I didn't dare ask for the car back. A flicker of resentment flashed across his face. Then he shouted, "You already have so many cars. Why do you have to fight me for this one? You have everything. This is all I've got." Liu Ryan's face darkened as he yanked me aside. "Let go if you don't care for it. Then why fight over it? Or is it that you just like taking things others love?" Back then, I was proud and headstrong. How could I stomach such accusations? We had a huge argument and parted on bad terms. Only later did I realize Lumingyi wasn't talking about the car at all. He was clearly talking about Liu Ryan. He believed I had stolen him away. That's why he hated me so much. When I snapped back to reality, Liu Ryan suddenly panicked and grabbed my arm. "You really want to leave?" he asked. "Why died?" But the look on his face stopped me cold. His eyes were full of turbulent emotion. Like something inside was about to break free. A person ready to explode from within. Even his voice started to tremble. "No, this isn't right. Yi Jung, why won't you support me? Didn't you say you liked me so much?" His madness startled me. What was wrong with Liu Ryan? Had he lost his mind, or was he just furious? Maybe it was the way I spoke to Lumingyi. But in our past life, I hadn't even pursued him yet at this point. He'd always been cold toward me. Never smiled or joked. He must be having another episode. I tried to shake him off. "Let go," I said, but he only clung tighter. His eyes even started to glisten with tears. "Yi Jung, do you not like me anymore? Do you not want me anymore?" This time, I was genuinely shaken. Liu Ryan had never said anything like that to me before. I stared at him, eyes wide. "Liu Ryan, what the hell is wrong with you? Did you take the wrong meds or suddenly wake up?" He didn't say a word, just stared at me with that intense gaze. His clothes disheveled, his expression wild and deranged. My temper flared up in an instant. After everything he did to me in our past life, he still dared to act like this. "Weren't you the one who said me supporting you was an insult, Liu Ryan, or are you just a shameless leech? So poor yet still trying to live off someone else?" Lumingyi opened his mouth, clearly not expecting me to speak to Liu Ryan like that. But this was all from our past life too. That was the time when I liked him the most. Every word I spoke to him was careful and measured, afraid I might hurt his pride. But now I couldn't care less. "Liu Ryan, what kind of worthless thing are you really?" I was worse than a heartless beast, biting the hand that fed me. I honestly wondered how I ever fell for someone like that. But to my surprise, Liu Ryan didn't get angry. All the color drained from his face, leaving nothing but a sickly pale hue. I flung his hand off mine without hesitation and walked away without looking back. The card I gave Liu Ryan had 200,000 on it, enough to cover his tuition and living expenses. I should have just spent it myself. Giving it to him only brought me trouble and shame. I might as well have bought another watch. At least then I'd get a view of the world. In our past life, aside from that one car, Liu Ryan never gave me anything else. Birthdays, anniversaries, holidays. I always picked gifts for him with care and attention, but he never remembered. Or maybe he just didn't care. Instead, Lumingyi suddenly changed, became less quiet, more flashy. He took Liu Ryan's money and went shopping everywhere, buying cars worth hundreds of thousands, watches, clothes, anything he wanted. And every time he got something new, he'd show it off in front of me. "Yi Jung," he'd say, "this is something Ryan brought back just for me from Paris. What did he get you?" "Nothing, right?" he'd sneer. "He probably didn't bring you a damn thing." Then I'd end up having a huge fight with Liu Ryan again, and our relationship would sink even further. Looking back now, I really didn't lack money. Why did I ever care whether he bought me things? If I wanted something, I could have just bought it myself. I added another 100,000 to that 200 and bought myself a Zhang Dunand. On my way back to campus, as fate would have it, I saw Lu Mingyi and Liu Ryan as soon as I got off the car. When he saw the new watch on my wrist, his gaze changed instantly. Hatred and poison in his eyes, plain as day. At that time, Liu Ryan had nothing. He was completely broke. Even the sweatpants he wore were fraying at the seams, though he'd tried to snip the loose threads and iron them carefully. One glance was all it took to see they were cheap goods from a roadside stall. "Yi Zheng, you sure are rich," he spat, staring hard at my wrist. His fists clenched tight. "Zhang Dunand must have cost a fortune. One watch is worth several years of our tuition." He fell silent as he stepped closer, hovering near Liu Ryan, intentionally or not. Truth be told, we were never from the same world. Back then, when he said things like that, I'd always feel small. I wasn't great with words, and the more I said, the more annoyed Liu Ryan would get. But now, to hell with all of that. I smiled slightly. "Looks like you're not just poor. You're also not very bright. Now you finally realize. My family lives in a 500 square meter villa in the city center. You live in a 30 square meter slum on the outskirts. Of course we're not from the same world." Lu Mingyi's face turned an ugly shade of green. His features twisted for a brief second. I stepped toward him and said word by word, "Lu Mingyi, you will never belong to my world. Go ahead and be jealous until it kills you." Ryan quickly snapped out of it and was about to start playing the pitiful act again. I sneered. "All you know how to do is cling to women, like a roach crawling in the gutter. Don't even bother going to Liu Ryan. You two are equally pathetic. Both just as disgusting." After cursing out that pair of shameless lovers, I went home in a great mood. If I weren't holding back on revenge, I'd have already dealt with what he did to me in our past life. But the thing about him drugging me in this life, it hasn't happened yet. I don't have any proof. No matter how much it pains me, I won't throw away my life over trash like him. Dragging through an entire lifetime last time was already unbearable. This time, I just want to stay far away from those two bastards. Whether they're doing well or not has nothing to do with me. In this new life, I want to start over. Yet the more I try to keep my distance from them, the more they cling to me like ghosts. It wasn't long after that a friend came to me on purpose, looking gleeful, like he couldn't wait to share. Thinking I'd enjoy hearing that Liu Ryan and Lu Mingyi were now in utter misery, so broke they couldn't even afford tuition. I heard Liu Ryan was frantically taking on part-time jobs everywhere, and Lu Mingyi wanted to buy a new pair of pants that day. But even something that cost only 80 yuan, he couldn't afford with either WeChat or Alipay. In the end, he sold the iPhone you had bought him just to scrape together some money, and barely managed to pay the tuition fee. It took me a while before I remembered that in the last life, around this time, I saw how outdated Liu Ryan's phone was. And knowing what he liked most, I bought him an iPhone 14 for its camera, but the very next day, I saw it in Lu Mingyi's hand. Just like that, the truth of the world slapped me in the face. I lowered my gaze, softly muttering, "That's just truly heartless." I hadn't even taken more than a few steps before Lu Mingyi blocked my path. His expression was riled up. He grabbed my arm angrily. "Yi Zheng, why won't you support Liu Ryan?" he snapped. "Don't you know his major is extremely specialized? If his education gets delayed because of tuition, can you take that responsibility?" His words threw my thoughts into disarray. I almost laughed from the absurdity. In my last life, I eventually figured it out. What kind of people they really were. They wanted other people's money, but couldn't swallow their own pride, shamelessly eating from someone's bowl. while cursing the person feeding them. It was the pinnacle of brazen hypocrisy. How was his future supposed to have anything to do with me? I'm not a sponsor, and I'm certainly not his father. How can you say that he protested? Some classmates who knew us had gathered nearby, which only made Lumingyi more fired up. He pointed at me, like I was some villain bullying the weak. You're wearing a watch worth years of our tuition, he shouted. So what if you sponsor us a little? Or are you just that selfish? Willing to waste your money, but not willing to help someone in real need? He probably thought everyone was like Liu Ryan, easily swayed by his shameless rants. But before I could say anything, my friend beat me to it. He came from a similar background as me, but with a much more explosive temper. He let out a cold snort, then turned to glare at Lumingyi, which mental hospital forgot to lock its doors, and let this dumbass out. If you want money, go beg on the street. At the very worst, sell your ass. Even though you're ugly as hell, there's always someone desperate enough to pay. 10 times at $80 a pop, you have your tuition in no time. You've got arms, legs, and a kidney, yet you still shamelessly ask others for money. Is he your father or what? Lumingyi always preferred to stab people in the dark. He had never been scolded so bluntly in public. He was utterly unable to form a reply. Other classmates chimed in one after another. If you're broke, just apply for financial aid. Don't beg for money and act so entitled. Absolutely shameless. No wonder you've got nothing. Lumingyi took a step back, his eyes wide with disbelief. I let out a cold laugh, remembering how I always treated classmates to meals and was generous whenever we went out. Of course the others would speak up for me. Thinking back now, other than Liu Ryan, what else did Lumingyi ever have? There wasn't a single thing he could beat me at. If I hadn't been utterly bewitched in my last life, with my heart and soul completely consumed by him, someone like him wouldn't even have crossed my line of sight. It was at that moment Liu Ryan suddenly showed up. Lumingyi rushed over to complain like a child tattling on someone. I just asked Yi Jung to help support you a little, he whined. He has so much money to buy all those watches, but he refuses to help. I don't even know what I did to offend him. He cursed me in the most awful way. Liu Ryan's expression shifted immediately. In a low voice, he said, I know you look down on me, but I was only thinking of Yanyan's good. She's so outstanding. I felt deeply repulsed. Lumingyi was like a toad that had leapt onto someone's foot. It didn't bite, but it was absolutely revolting. The most hateful part was, he clung on like a ghost that wouldn't fade. Impossible to shake off. Liu Ryan frowned slightly. You cursed him. I couldn't help but let out a mocking laugh. As expected, he was always like this. The moment Lumingyi pretended to be pitiful, he would jump to his defense without knowing the full story. Back then, I'd always argue with him in frustration, and then hide away to grieve in silence. But that won't happen anymore. I lifted my eyes and looked at Liu Ryan. Yes, he's right, I said. I did curse him. But to my surprise, Liu Ryan didn't get angry. He lowered his head, his voice soft. If he cursed you, he said, then you must have done something wrong to make him so upset. Then he turned to Lumingyi, his voice cool. Yi Jung isn't an unreasonable person. Apologize to him. I was utterly stunned. For a moment, I thought I hadn't woken up yet. Lumingyi stood there dumbfounded. It took him a long time before he stammered, but Liu Ryan's face had gone cold. I told you to apologize. Lumingyi looked shocked and panicked. How can you say that, he cried out. Even I was at a loss. Liu Ryan actually asked his precious Lumingyi to apologize to me. Had he been kicked in the head by a donkey? A fleeting thought crossed my mind. Could it be that he had also been reborn? But I quickly dismissed it. No way! In the previous life, Liu Ryan hated me so much, he even wanted to kill me. If he had really been reborn, He would have fled far away the moment he saw me. There had to be some other scheme at play. I took a step back and watched him warily. Liu Ryan seemed hurt by my guarded gaze. He looked at me with pained eyes. Yi Jung, I know I was wrong before, he said. Can you forgive me? You liked me, didn't you? Can we be together? I'll make up for everything I owed you before. The more he spoke, the more emotional he became. By the end, he was staring at me, as if I were some treasure he'd just recovered, his voice even trembling slightly. It was too absurd. I couldn't help clenching my fists. In my last life, I'd chased after him relentlessly, sacrificed an entire lifetime, just for a few words like these. But even up to the moment I died, he never once told me he liked me. And now in this life, after I cursed him, humiliated him, he finally said he liked me. Then what did everything I gave up in the past even mean? A cold, mocking smile tugged at my lips. You think you're good enough to be with me? Liu Ryan, what makes you think you're worthy of me? You think someone like you deserves to be with me? One piece of my clothing is worth 3 years of your labor. You really think too highly of yourself. What makes you think you belong by my side? Didn't he think I humiliated him? Then I'd let him taste what true humiliation felt like. Sure enough, Liu Ryan's face went pale. He grew frantic. I don't have money right now, he blurted out. But wait for me, will you, he pleaded. I'll have money in the future. That part, he wasn't wrong about. He really would have quite a bit of money later on. But what did that have to do with me? The hatred and resentment inside me were almost too much to contain. Looking at Liu Ryan standing beside him like that, even if every other woman in the world disappeared, I still wouldn't be with you. After I left that day, Liu Ryan stood there, staring blankly at him like a lost soul. He looked utterly pitiful. Even his shoulders had slumped, just standing there like that, as if all the strength had been drained from him in one night. But all I felt inside was a cold, bitter sneer. I didn't know what Liu Ryan was up to now, whether he had truly changed, or if he had simply lost his mind. The Yi Jung who once loved him with everything he had died in that last life, and would never come back again. Without my support, Liu Ryan and Lu Mingyi would live a life more tragic than heartbreak itself. Liu Ryan's software didn't sell. His startup failed too. I heard they were so broke now they were close to selling their own blood. But none of that mattered to me anymore. Early the next morning, my phone started ringing. I picked it up. The screen showed a name I hadn't seen in years. Shang Xianxian, someone who used to be my friend. I felt a little dazed. To me, it had been over a decade since I'd seen those names. Back when I was with Liu Ryan, he didn't like me having friends of the opposite sex, or even those second-generation rich buddies of mine. Over time, I'd slowly cut ties with many old friends. Our families had social ties with Cheng Xianxians, so we'd always gotten along well. He even gave me that car during college as a birthday gift. Now I remembered. He had told me he closed a big deal himself, and that his father told him to take good care of that car. But back then, my whole heart was consumed by someone else. I had no room left for anyone else. That car ended up just sitting idle at home. When I answered the call, his excited voice came through right away. Yi Jung, he said, I heard you finally cursed out that Liu Ryan woman. I hadn't even opened my mouth yet, and he was already thrilled. It's about time someone put him in his place. Always mooching off you and still having the nerve to turn on you. None of us dared say anything before, but you finally did it. I smiled faintly. What's the occasion, I asked. There's a gathering tonight. Same old spot. At 8:51, I hung up the phone and found myself lost in thought for a long while, remembering how close we all used to be. A group of childhood friends, always hanging out at the bar. But after getting together with Liu Ryan, I, once so arrogant and wild, Let love strip me down to the bare bones. I stopped going to high-end malls, learned for the first time how to shop at street stalls and markets, stopped wearing luxury brands, and carefully picked out clothes that cost just a few bucks. All just to make sure when I stood beside Liu Ryan, he wouldn't frown at me again. I didn't dare eat at the restaurants I once loved. And when we did go out to eat, it was always some cheap takeout barbecue from a tiny diner. I lived like someone colored in artificial dye, cautious and small, just hoping he'd like me a little more. Back then, I had loved him with everything I had. When I arrived at the bar that night, Sean was overjoyed. He kept pouring me drinks, and I didn't refuse. I let myself enjoy the rare, long-lost breeze of freedom. These friends of mine, they were actually all pretty great, especially Chung Xianxian. At my wedding, he had even said, if I ever felt wronged, I should come to him. He'd help me teach Liu Ryan and whoever else a lesson. And he really did go look for Liu Ryan later. It was around the time Liu Ryan had just found out he was pregnant. Back then, my heart had been filled with nothing but joy. She thought having a child could win back his heart. She pinned all her hopes on that little life. But later I found out that child wasn't mine at all. It was Lu Mingyi's. I went completely mad, tearing through everything in the house, fighting with Liu Ryan like our world was collapsing. And then Lu Mingyi pushed it even further, calling me on purpose at 2 or 3 in the morning, letting me hear him and Liu Ryan making love. He panted heavily into the phone, with the sounds of their bodies colliding echoing behind his breath, whispering as if enjoying the chaos he stirred up. I clutched the toilet and vomited until the room spun, crying until my bowel mixed with tears. Eventually, I collapsed, shivering helplessly as I looked up. The man in the mirror was deathly pale, with bloodshot eyes dull and lifeless. His face was streaked with tears and snot. When Chen Xian found out, he went straight to Liu Ryan's place and slapped him across the face. If I hadn't held him back, he would have beaten him to a pulp. I clung to his bruised eyes and faced Liu Ryan, my voice trembling in fury. You heartless bastard, did your conscience rot away? I once treated you so well, and this is how you repay me with betrayal. Liu Ryan didn't fight back that time. Blood welled at the corner of his mouth. He bowed his head in silence. Heavy rain poured down outside. Chung Xianxian shoved me from the doorway, and we left together. Just the two of us. After a few rounds of drinks, Chung Xianxian pulled a girl over. His face was flushed with drunken boldness. I glanced at him and saw something different in his eyes. I couldn't help but find it funny. I knew that in my last life. I even did something extreme for your sake, and he still stood up for me without hesitation. If I were to find someone to marry in this life, I hoped it would be someone like him. Now I was beginning to understand that sometimes love alone couldn't solve everything. Between me and Liu Ryan was a deep rift, a divide shaped by background and upbringing. We came from different worlds, incompatible in every way. He grew up in that kind of household and built his defenses early, sharp, sensitive, insecure, and distant, while I was timid, raised in a protected family, a family that taught me to give up everything for love. But when I returned this time, I thought friendship was like water, constant and calm, not knowing how intoxicating the scent of smoke and liquor could be. Say something, I murmured. He nodded faintly. I was blind back then. He lowered his head slowly and gradually moved closer. Then he whispered, "So you're being serious now?" But before he could finish, his whole body tensed with suppressed emotion, his voice shaking with feelings I couldn't quite grasp. "Come with me," he said. I was afraid of making a scene in front of our friends, so I had no choice but to follow him out. The moment we stepped outside, I yanked my arm away. "What the hell is wrong with you?" I snapped. "What are you losing your mind over this time?" Liu Ryan said nothing. He just stared at me like his life depended on it. Since the very beginning, He had always treated me with a kind of submissive gentleness, almost like he was trying to please me. Now his eyes were red-rimmed, and he barely managed to keep his expression in check. Then he quietly asked through clenched teeth, "What did you just say?" I froze, then clenched my jaw and said, "I said I don't love you anymore. I was blind before. You don't love me anymore." Liu Ryan let out a strange, twisted laugh. Then he suddenly grabbed my collar, his gaze locking with mine, his voice as cold as shattered ice. "Say that again if you dare. You once said you loved me, said you wanted to be with me, said you'd never leave me ever. Were all of those things lies?" There was madness in his eyes, but I immediately realized something was off. I hadn't said any of those things in this life. Those words were what I said to him before we got married in our past life. How could he possibly know that? Liu Ryan quickly realized he had slipped and instinctively took a step back. I said quietly, "Liu Ryan, you've come back too, haven't you?" He said nothing. The midnight wind howled past me in the lonely night. Fallen leaves scattered across the ground were dragged by the wind. I walked with the chill clinging to me. Occasionally, a car would pass me by. Its headlights flashed briefly, then quickly vanished into the helpless dark. "Liu Ryan." I forced out a grim smile. "How dare you?" He actually came back reborn too. After the way he treated me in our past life, how does he even dare to say something like that in front of me now? I said the same thing in my past life, and I meant it just as much then. But what was the result? I died with regret. In this life, I finally wanted him again. I wanted to live a good life with him, but he insisted on leaving my wounds open. Without hesitation, he tested me again. Mockingly, he told me that I could never break free from those tragic memories. Liu Ryan seemed a bit flustered. "Yi Jung, please, let me explain. I really did come back reborn, but now I've finally figured it out. In my past life, I cared too much about the wrong things. I didn't even realize I had already fallen in love with you. Let me make it up to you, please." Afraid, Liu Ryan turned her head away. "I never hit you. Even in our past life, when he cheated on me, I never laid a finger on him. But this one slap, I don't regret it. Time after time, I gave myself fully to you, forever like smoke. How dare you? How could he hurt me like that again, and then speak so lightly of it afterward? I loved you." That slap was me letting it all out. I put every ounce of strength I had into it. Blood welled at the corner of his mouth, but he only wiped it off casually. "Have you heard enough? I can't take it anymore." He grabbed my hand. "Let me have a few more slaps then." He was clearly spouting lies, yet his eyes were rimmed red. Tears streamed down without warning. I was a little stunned. Liu Ryan knelt before me with her back in his hardest times in his past life. His father gambled away the tuition he had saved so painstakingly, and still came home to beat him black and blue. The next day, he showed up at school covered in bruises. He didn't cry working 3 jobs a day. He collapsed from hunger and exhaustion more than once. Even then, he never cried. I used to think he was born with a heart of stone. Never imagined he'd shed tears in front of me. Liu Ryan's tears diluted the blood at the corner of his mouth. The torment on his body seemed impossible to contain. Even his back began to hunch. He pleaded, "Yi Jung, come back. If you hate me, you can kill me if you want. Just don't leave me." He was driving me mad. "Liu Ryan, have you completely lost your mind? What is wrong with you?" He lowered his head and confessed, "I was too insecure. Back then, I was guarded all over. Felt like everyone was just waiting to hurt me. You were so good, so brilliant. We weren't even from the same world. I didn't dare to like you. I didn't dare to believe that you actually liked me. I was afraid that if I accepted you with all my heart, one day you'd suddenly tell me I wasn't worthy of you, that you were just playing around. So yes, I was stupid. I deserved all of it. You can hit me or curse me. I don't care. I'm begging you to come back. He cried out loud, as if he wanted to release every repressed emotion he'd buried deep inside. You have no idea what I went through. After you left, I couldn't take it anymore. I missed you, Liu Ryan. Didn't you love Lu Mingyi? In our past life, didn't you drug me and poison me to death just for Lu Mingyi? There was no drug. Liu Ryan cooked that soup herself. What drug are you talking about? Stop pretending you don't know. I gripped the roadside railing tightly. Otherwise, I couldn't guarantee that I wouldn't slap him again. Someone swapped all my later medications. Even though my condition had clearly started to improve at the beginning, but the longer it went on, the worse my body became. I bit down hard on the tip of my tongue. The numbness spread through me like anesthesia. The woman I loved killed me for another man, even if it was just in the heat of the moment. It still left me drowning in agony. I was never as desperate as Liu Ryan. Not once in my life. I even told the housekeeper to take good care of her. How could I possibly want her dead? In those 2 months, we both saw it clearly in each other's eyes. If it wasn't him, then the only possibility left was that she wanted me dead. And I still didn't understand that she had done it on purpose. My heart had long stopped fearing pain, but that didn't make it easier to accept. Who was it that killed the child? The whole world turned blood red before my eyes, and in a roar, everything burst into flames. Even if he couldn't escape her love, I felt a wave of hopelessness wash over me, a weariness that seeped deep into my bones. Whether it was love or hatred, I was truly exhausted. In this life, all I wanted was to live a good life, that's all. The autumn rain came without warning. Raindrops poured down on my head and face. Liu Ryan stood in the rain, soaked and disheveled. I couldn't tell whether it was rain or tears on her face. A low sob caught in her throat, like a riddle unraveling. I stared at her with a blank face. You even had a child with him in your past life. Liu Ryan opened her mouth, but couldn't speak. After a long silence, she finally admitted. He was the one who got me drunk. That's the only way it happened between us. I pulled a bitter smile. Liu Ryan lowered her head even more. From beginning to end, the only person I ever loved was you. I never wanted to betray you. But the memory remains. And just then, from the shadows of the street came a familiar figure. So what am I to you? Lu Mingyi called out as you turned back. He was still wearing that same white suit, soaked through and clinging tightly to his body. Liu Ryan didn't show any emotion, but her eyes flickered with madness. You love her. Then what am I to you? All these years I stayed by your side. What does that make me? Liu Ryan clenched her fists tightly. There was no trace of warmth in her eyes as she looked at him. Only hatred remained for you. Lu Mingyi looked the same, clearly not reborn. He was still the Lu Mingyi from our past life. And now he hadn't done anything to poison me. I didn't even have a place to direct my revenge. Liu Ryan seemed to understand that too. She didn't say anything more. Lu Mingyi sank into his usual depression. You hate me, Liu Ryan. You actually hate me. If you hadn't been constantly stirring up trouble between me and Yi Jun, we never would have ended up like this. His tone was cold as ice. I snared me, stirring things up. Liu Ryan no longer bothered to pretend. If it weren't for your inferiority complex and arrogance, how could I have stirred anything at all? It was your own heart that was torn, wanting him but afraid to reach for him, always dragging me along to make him jealous, just so you could keep proving he loved you, to feed that twisted sickness inside you. And now you're blaming everything on me. Liu Ryan's fingertips dug deep into Yi Zhang's sleeve. Lu Mingyi tilted his head, his expression full of confusion, as if he were just asking an idle question. You already had everything. Why did you still have to fight me for Liu Ryan? He didn't seem to expect an answer from me. He just kept talking to himself. You were born into a good family. You looked good and everyone flocked to you. They loved you, praised you, surrounded you. Whatever you wanted, they offered it up to you. You didn't even need to ask. So many people liked you. Then why did you still have to fight me? Liu Ryan's voice trembled with a trace of bitter desperation. He was all I had. Why is it that I only had that one person, and you still had to take him away, when you already had so much? I answered calmly. Liu Ryan is a person. Who he likes is his choice. I can't force him. And besides, I never once won. In this game of love, I was the only one who lost everything completely. Is that so? Lu Mingyi stepped closer to me. Only then did I see clearly. He had been hiding one hand behind his back the entire time. A sudden sense of dread surged within me. Just as I was about to step back, he suddenly drew a knife and lunged straight at me. Go to hell! His face twisted with rage. His expression completely unhinged. As long as you're dead, Liu Ryan will be mine again. Yi Zheng, what makes you so deserving of happiness? Damn it, he was too close. I didn't have time to dodge. My dilated pupils reflected his bloodless face. And just then, a sudden force shoved me hard out of the way. So fierce and desperate, she didn't care about her own life, and shielded me without hesitation. Lu Mingyi froze as he looked at Liu Ryan standing in front of him. His fingers gripping the knife began to tremble. Panic overtook Liu Ryan's face. I quickly turned back. The blade had already sunk deep into Liu Ryan's abdomen. Blood seeped out and was washed away by the rain. She seemed not to notice, only smiled faintly as she looked at me. As long as you're okay. By the time we reached the hospital, Liu Ryan had completely lost consciousness. She had lost too much blood and was rushed straight into emergency care. Lu Mingyi was taken away by the police who arrived. It wasn't until the third day that Liu Ryan finally woke up. I walked into the hospital room. Looking at her, so many words clogged my throat, but I couldn't say a single one. She looked incredibly weak, her face pale as paper, yet she still forced a faint smile. Is Yi Zheng alright? A swirl of emotions rose in me. Why did you take that stab from me? Her lash drooped low. I don't know either. I just didn't want to see you get hurt. Lu Mingyi was aiming straight for my heart with that blade. Thankfully, Liu Ryan stepped in. Her leg wasn't injured too badly. What do you plan to do now? I asked suddenly. Liu Ryan quickly understood what I meant. She gave a bitter smile and said, whatever should be done will be done. Let's be honest, she was your wife in your past life. She even had a child with you. I sat down on the other bed. She spoke softly. But he killed you. I fell silent as Liu Ryan coughed a few times. Pain furrowed her brows. Her voice was hoarse as she whispered, Yi Zheng, I really know I was wrong. I was terribly wrong before. Her voice began to choke. Her lips were so dry they had cracked. If I could change, would you be willing? No, I cut her off. You saved me, yes. But in our past life, I also died because of you. At most, we're even now. Even if you took that blow for me, it doesn't erase the pain you caused me before. Her eyes turned red. She bit down hard, holding back tears. But Yi Zheng, you once said you'd love me forever. I suddenly felt tired. I gave a bitter laugh and said, Liu Ryan, love can run out. You used 10 years to wear away every last bit of love I had for you. Liu Ryan's face was deathly pale. She looked completely lost. Yi Zheng, don't be like this. You were the one who said you loved me first. Before I turned to leave, I looked back one last time. Liu Ryan had grown so thin. The maternity gown hung loosely on her frail frame. Her features still held the trace of the girl I once loved. But her soul had long since faded into shadow. Maybe we did love each other once, but the timing was never right. And now, in a quiet voice, I said, Liu Ryan, I truly don't love you anymore. As I stepped out of the hospital room, I could still hear her cries of despair behind me. But Yi Jung, what am I supposed to do now? Why did I come back to this life? Just to hear you say you no longer love me. Then I would have rather died in the last life. I lowered my head, my eyes dry and aching. I couldn't cry anymore, because all those tears had already been shed in the past life. And now I walked away without looking back. I left all those wails behind me, until I could no longer hear a single sound. Liu Ryan didn't shield Lu Mingyi. He was sentenced for intentional homicide. His heart had turned as cold as ice. The school expelled him too. I heard his mother couldn't bear the blow. She jumped from a building and ended her life. I returned to watch on the day of the trial. Part of me still wondered why the path to forgiveness had to be so painful, why it had to hurt so much. People said it was all because he was consumed by jealousy, jealous that I had everything. So he did everything he could to steal Liu Ryan from me, to prove that he, too, could take away happiness. And when he realized even Liu Ryan was gone, he completely lost his mind. They said after hearing about his mother's death, he went utterly insane. His mind broke apart. He even screamed profanities during the sentencing. Of course, I was the one who had someone deliver the news of her death to him. I even asked my father to help make sure he was well contained in prison. Told him to find someone to keep Lu Mingyi locked up tight in there. In our past life, that man drubbed me he's owed us for a long time. Eventually, every debt must be repaid in full. 3 years later, I married. Both of her families placed great importance on the wedding. We held a grand banquet. All the prominent figures in the city were invited. It was an incredibly lavish affair. Just as we were about to go on stage, my assistant came running up to me, holding a red envelope. There was nothing written on it. "Mr. Yi, take a look, there's a card inside this red envelope." He really did send it, but there was no name left behind. He frowned and asked, "What do you want to do about this?" Xiang Xian and I exchanged a glance. We both knew who it was from. She gave a light smile. "Well then, if someone's so eager to send money, we might as well accept it." Just then, my phone suddenly rang. It was a text message from an unfamiliar number. At the end of the screen was only one sentence. "If one day you stop loving him, then come back. I'll wait for you forever." Xiang Xian sneered, "Then let him wait. Even in the next life, he won't get the chance." Right in front of her, I deleted the message and blocked the number without hesitation. "Come on," I said as I took her hand with a gentle smile. "Everyone's waiting for us." Those dark nights would one day come to an end, and I would never look back again. Liu Ryan stood barefoot. When she saw Yi Jung again, she froze. Before her stood the 20-year-old version of him. His face was full of youthful energy. So unlike the weary man she remembered, she had long forgotten how long it had been since they last met. Her gaze couldn't move away from him. She stared at him greedily. It had been so long since she had seen Yi Jung. Back in that past life, when the butler told her he had died, she hadn't believed it. Not until she returned and saw his cold, lifeless body. Strangely enough, in that moment, she felt nothing at all. Everything around her vanished. For a few seconds, she couldn't see anything, couldn't hear anything, until they frantically helped her up. Only then did she realize she had collapsed. Very calmly, she asked the butler, "Did he leave any last words?" The butler shook his head. Sir didn't say a single thing. So he hadn't left even one word for her. Then again, perhaps they had already said all there was to say. In their youth, when he loved her, he had whispered every sweet word he knew. Later, when they became enemies, they tore open each other's wounds without mercy, even dirtied the last scraps of decency they had left. He cursed her, saying she'd die a miserable death. She screamed that he was nothing but a lowlife. What else was left to say? The good, the bad. had all been said and exhausted long ago, and it was at that moment she suddenly felt a dull pain in her heart. A slow, dragging ache. It had started out as something faint, like a quiet whisper, not sharp at all, but soon it burrowed deep, vicious, and relentless. It felt like my heart had been pierced 1,000 times over. The pain was so unbearable that I had to kneel and lower my head. I looked toward Yi Jung. She sat there quietly, without the slightest reaction. If it had been before and he saw me like this, even during our fiercest arguments, he would have rushed over to check on me. He was always that foolishly kind, but this time, he didn't even spare me a single glance, because he was already gone. Truly gone, never to appear before me again. That was what I thought. But strangely, I didn't feel sad. It was as if I were contemplating someone else's troubles, as if my body and mind had become someone else's entirely, separated from the heart that throbbed in pain. What should I do now? He really left me in a mess. I think I even have a meeting to attend tomorrow. That will have to be postponed. After all, I have to arrange his funeral. Suddenly, my throat started to itch. I coughed a few times, only to catch the butler's terrified expression. He panicked and called for Madame. I lowered my head. That's when I saw the scattered crimson blooming across my chest. Whose blood was this? I wondered in confusion. Then the itching in my throat grew unbearable, and I suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. The butler was frantic. He grabbed me and insisted on rushing me to the hospital. But my mind clung to a single thought. So this is what remains of my former Yi Jun. I hadn't shed a tear after his death. I even went home and packed up his things. He had once been so indulgent and extravagant, yet now the room felt empty and bare. There were only a few pieces of cheap clothing from roadside stalls. It felt strangely fitting, I thought, after everything we'd been through. We were finally at the end. That was until I opened the cabinet and found it filled with bottles of medicated oil. Back when he delivered food part-time and got hurt on the job, the injuries would ache like hell whenever it rained, so he had someone specially make that oil for him. I used to tease him for stocking the car with it. He would laugh while massaging my calves, saying what if we needed it one day. But after we got married, I rarely came home, and even when I did, we always ended up fighting. So I'd only used that oil a few times. Barely half a bottle was gone. That's when it suddenly hit me. We had actually shared some good moments too. I had once genuinely thought he was wonderful. But in the end, through all the endless fights and clashes, we had stripped each other down to mere masks. Suddenly, I felt something warm and wet on my face. I reached up to touch it, and realized I didn't even know when. I had already been crying. Tears were streaming uncontrollably down my face. After Yi Jung was gone, I didn't forget him as quickly as I had imagined. Instead, he kept haunting my dreams every night, like he was deliberately trying to torment me. Sometimes, the dream would return to our youth. He would casually hand me his lunchbox, saying, "Liu Ryan, this is walnut chicken made by my family's maid. It's the best there is." Back then, I found his childish pride irritating, felt nothing but annoyance toward him. But now I suddenly realized that kind of open affection was actually quite endearing. It wasn't until much later that I learned that dish and those walnuts were his favorite. He had wanted to share what he loved most with me. He gave it all without reservation. But back then, I wasn't worthy of a love so rare. The insecurities of my youth made me overly sensitive. I wrapped myself in layers of defenses and drove away anyone who tried to get close, wounding them again and again. He had a good family, good looks, and so many people liked him. I couldn't believe someone like him would fall for me, someone who had nothing to offer. I thought it was just another rich boy's game. He must have been toying with me. So I treated him worse and worse. I wanted him to leave. He was a kind of sincerity that had never existed. In the calm and darkness of my world, he disrupted my entire ecosystem, left me utterly at a loss. Yet I still wanted to be despicable in his persistence, to confirm again and again how pitiful and terrifying his feelings for me were. After we got married, our relationship seemed to improve a bit, but the street name constantly reminded me that he and I would never belong to the same world. He was right. The first time I got money, I excitedly bought him a car, but that was just like back in college, when his admirers had already given him international coins as gifts. What did I have that was worthy of his affection? At the time, I didn't understand my own heart. I thought I truly hated him, but I couldn't help getting close to him. I kept appearing in front of him with Lumingi, and when I saw that wounded expression on his face, I soaked up that twisted breath like a sponge. Watching him, I knew he cared about me. Later on, in my dreams, he was always on my right side. He lay on a hospital bed. His gaze was icy. He said, "Liu Ryan, I don't love you anymore." Then I jolted awake in panic, unable to sleep through the night, and that nightmare repeated every day. Sometimes it made me happy, sometimes it made me afraid. Eventually, I had to seek out a master. I asked the master, "Master, is there something he can't let go of? Do I need to perform a ritual to release him? A ceremony to put him at peace?" The master looked at me for a long time and let out a sigh. He pressed his palms together and said solemnly, "The one who can't let go is not him." That day I sat on the mountain for a long time before I understood. It turned out I was the one who couldn't let go. I had fallen in love with him long ago. On the third day after Yesheng's death, I began to lose my grip on reality. I thought I shouldn't care about Lumingi and the child. No matter how he lashed out, I responded only with cold indifference. "You were the one who insisted on coming to this sea. It has nothing to do with me. On the day of your birthday, I washed down 2 bottles of sleeping pills with alcohol to make sure it would be final. I even slit my own wrists. The unbearable pain slowly turned numb. Suddenly, I felt a breeze brush across my face. The sunlight was warm. Birdsong rang in my ears. My hand was suddenly gripped by something soft. I turned my head and saw Yejeng at 20 standing before me. He smiled and said, "Liu Ryan, why did it take you so long to get here?" I stared at him for a long time. My vision gradually blurred with warmth. Then I slowly turned around and hugged him tighter and tighter. He was startled by me, pushed me and asked what I was doing. "Who bullied you?" But then he wrapped his arms around me too. "Xingxiao, what happened to you? Did you miss me?" My voice cracked with tears. "Yes, Yejeng, I missed you so deeply. So much that I couldn't bear it anymore. If only I could stay in that moment forever. It had been so long I could barely remember anymore. And in that moment I finally realized that 1,000 arrows piercing the heart was nothing compared to this. I lay on the bed, sobbing until my voice was hoarse. "If that's the case, then why did you let me come back? I thought I could win him back and do the tragedy between us. But I never expected I'd lose him completely." My heart ached so much I couldn't breathe. I laughed and cried at the same time. I felt like I had gone mad. Yet I also felt more clear-headed than ever. I clearly understood that my rebirth was only meant for atonement, to endure every bit of the suffering he once had. Death was not the true departure. Only now had he truly and completely left me. And for the rest of my life, I would live in this endless despair, with no escape possible.